It should be on the whiteboard that Rob Dillingham, go ahead, use a Sharpie, put it on the whiteboard, Chris Finch, and say that Rob Dillingham is going to get between 20 and 25 minutes per game, every game for the rest of the season. So it's as clear as water being wet that the Minnesota Timberwolves at this point need to absolutely go ahead and unleash Rob Dillingham. Welcome to the NBA Rundown. On today's show, we are going to talk about what's wrong with the Minnesota Timberwolves. I have an answer for Chris Finch about what he should actually do as the head coach for this Timberwolves team. What he's been doing to this point has been an utter disservice to one young Rob Dillingham. We're going to get into what Rob Dillingham has done during the 10 out of 17 games he's been allowed to play in. And I'm going to go ahead and make an argument that the time has come for the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are now 8-9 and currently sitting comfortably in the 12th spot in the Western Conference, absolutely need to just look in the mirror and be honest that this Julius Randle trade with Dante DiVincenzo at this point just quite frankly isn't working out. Now, Rob Dillingham, on the other hand, can help make that deal actually work out. We are going to talk about that and a whole lot more on tonight's edition of the NBA Rundown. All right. New to the channel, please go ahead and subscribe and, of course, like this video. Also, check out our audio version of the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, wherever the hell you get your podcast. Please go ahead and download the NBA Rundown. All right, so many places that we could start here, and I thought we would start with three comments that I've heard recently about the Minnesota Timberwolves offense at this point. It is a one and done offense. The team is slow in general, and it is a plotting offense from hell. Now, my favorite is the plotting offense from hell, which basically, what that basically means is the rumors, which weren't rumors, which were actually legitimate comments about Julius Randle while he played in New York, they would say that's where basketball goes to die. The second you pass the ball to Julius Randle, that's where the basketball goes to die. And I've certainly seen a significant amount of that in the 17 Minnesota Timberwolves games I've suffered through so far this season. Now, I can tell you that in last night's game, Rob Dillingham finally had an opportunity to play a little bit more than he normally plays. He played a whopping 24 minutes last night. In that time, he was the difference maker for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, he made one mistake in the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, which led to Chris Finch yanking him out of the game. At which point, things just got a little bit more tight, and the Timberwolves ended up being forced into overtime. At which point, head coach Chris Finch of the Minnesota Timberwolves did not play Rob Dillingham until the game was essentially over, as the Timberwolves lost to the Houston Rockets at home, 117-111. If you will, it was absolutely 100% coaching malpractice by Chris Finch last night as it relates to one Rob Dillingham. Look, the kid needs to play, and I'm not saying he needs to go play down in the G League with Bronny James. Rob Dillingham absolutely needs to be unleashed at this point and needs to be given the opportunity to actually play some real minutes in the association. Now, when you look at this overall Minnesota Timberwolves team at this point, last year, they were basically ranked number 1 or number 2 in defense. At this point, they're sitting in 16th in the NBA. On the offensive side of the ball, they're currently hovering between 14 and 16. And one thing is for sure, when you watch this Timberwolves offense, for the most part, it is extraordinarily boring. Ball goes into Julius Randle. Then Julius Randle dribbles a couple times and figures out if he's going to shoot a layup or take a mid-range jump shot. Ball goes into Anthony Edwards, which he basically does the same thing, but with a little more flair than Julius Randle does. At the end of the day, there is absolutely no ball movement at all. Now, I talked about Chris Finch and his coaching malpractice with Rob Dillingham, but it's actually much deeper than that at this point. And look, I love Chris Finch. I think he did an absolutely fantastic job with the Minnesota Timberwolves last year. And I have faith that this Minnesota Timberwolves coaching staff is actually going to figure things out as the season goes on. But as it stands right now, in last night's game, they played a whopping, are you ready for it? 8 players last night for the Timberwolves last night. Just 8 players played. That in today's 82 regular season is absolutely coaching malpractice. At the very least, you need to get into double digits in terms of the players that you're actually going to play in a game. And what it comes down to is Chris Finch only trusts a handful of players on this team at this point. And that certainly is going to have to change. The way he pulled Rob Dillingham out of the game in the fourth quarter and then essentially didn't play him at all in the overtime just made absolutely no sense. Look, Rob Dillingham didn't have necessarily a great shooting game. He ended up scoring 12 points. He was 2 for 5 from the three-point arc. I think 5 for 13 overall. Certainly not Hall of Fame numbers, but what he did do was distribute the ball, which of course is exactly what this Minnesota Timberwolves team needs to actually happen. He had 7 assists in the game, and you have to remember Rob Dillingham last night only played 24 minutes, which is significantly more minutes than he normally gets. Look, Rob Dillingham has been with this Timberwolves team, hasn't been injured at all. He has averaging a whopping 8.7 minutes per game at this point in the 10 games that he's actually been allowed to play in by the Minnesota Timberwolves coaching staff. It is absolutely time, if the Timberwolves want to essentially save this season, not only save this season, but set themselves up for something maybe great down the road. It is clear that Rob Dillingham actually needs to get real minutes every single game in the association. And then Chris Finch is actually going to have to be honest with himself, look himself in the mirror and say, I'm going to have to live with the rookie mistakes. It is the only way players actually get better in the NBA. All right, so those are my thoughts on Rob Dillingham and the Minnesota Timberwolves at this point. I mean, it's clear that the Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo trade, at least at this stage, doesn't look good. The team certainly played better. They had a better style, better flow with Cat. Now, we have to remember it did take a while for the Chris Finch to sort of figure out how to integrate Rudy Gobert into this Timberwolves team. It took him a full calendar year to figure it out. And eventually they got it right last season with the Timberwolves going all the way through to the Western Conference Finals. So I have faith in Chris Finch and the coaching staff that they will eventually figure this out. But at this point, you are doing nobody a service by not at least playing Rob Dillingham, a guy you moved all the way up for in the NBA draft, a significant amount of minutes every single game. It should be on the whiteboard that Rob Dillingham, go ahead, use a Sharpie, put it on the whiteboard, Chris Finch, and say that Rob Dillingham is going to get between 20 and 25 minutes per game, every game for the rest of the season. All right. Look, the offense just flows so much better with a playmaker like Rob Dillingham. He absolutely can open up the rest of the offense for this Timberwolves team. All right, and we know Mike Conley is basically almost all the way down the backside of Career Mountain at this point. All right, go ahead and drop in your comments. I want to hear from you, North America. Drop them in. I want to know what your thoughts are on this Timberwolves team. Do you think the season is lost, or do you think they can still turn things around? And do you think that Chris Finch will ultimately do the Spike Lee right thing and actually play Rob Dillingham a significant amount of minutes every single game? For the NBA Rundown, I'm Dave DeBaugh, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.
This is Phoenix.